Hey everybody, this is Brian Yellow. On episode number 45 of Origin Stories on Creativity, I had Daniel Swenson. He's from Utah. He also is the producer and host of Dungeon Crawlers, which was founded in 2008. 170,000 listeners worldwide. It's mighty impressive. The dude has a wealth of knowledge from his love of all things geek. And basically, I'm struggling to come up with Tom Baker, who I confessed was my favorite Doctor Who. Really enjoyed talking to him. He's a great guy. His debut novel is called The Shadow Above the Flames. Probably one of the best first paragraphs I've read in a long time. It's got gorgeous cover art. I mean, you're talking about an author who really lucked into some really great cover art. We talked about how he got into it. You know, that's one of the main struggles as an author, is coming up with some cover art that works for you. A lot of publishers will decide what works for you, and he found some art that works for him. He goes into that. He goes into marketing and how, you know, his YouTube channel and how podcasting works, and, you know, how being a dungeon master and writing modules has basically influenced his writing. How it's not just been writing for him all along, it's been gaming that's produced a lot of his content and made him the writer that he is. You know, the show notes are going to be filled with some cool stuff, so check it out. Definitely would recommend you check out his YouTube channel and his podcast. I'm going to go ahead and let Daniel do some talking. Here he is.
Dungeon Crawlers is a podcast as well as a YouTube phenomenon, basically.
Yeah.
That's a very interesting concept, and it's been going for a while. 2008, did I read that correctly?
That is correct, since 2008.
Basically, you guys just geek out over bunches of stuff.
Yeah.
On a weekly basis, or is it a monthly basis?
We release 3 shows a week.
Wow. How did you meet your co-host?
So my co-host, I've actually gone through a few different co-hosts just because we've been doing it for so long. But my current co-host, one of them is a good friend of mine, just lives down the street. McKay is a friend of a friend that ended up joining. Baron is my other co-host, Scott. It's his friend, and I grew up knowing Baron's brother since like elementary school. And so he's on, and then we added Mackenzie, our female voice, recently, and she's part of a cosplay group that we do a lot of charity work with. And she was just interested, and it fit perfectly.
None of you got the right answer as to who the best Batman is, and I don't understand that. It's Michael Keaton.
You know, I love Keaton for what he contributes, but everyone has their own. I know.
No, I'm sorry. The answer is Michael Keaton, and I have to let you go now. No, I'm joking.
You know, it's like that age-old debate: who's the best doctor? Everyone has a different answer.
Well, it's obviously what is it? I can't even name him now because my tongue doesn't want to work. Who is the best doctor?
I feel like it's David Tennant, but that's me.
David Tennant. Who's my favorite doctor? Who's the guy with the scarf?
Oh, number 7.
Yeah, it is number 7. Okay, I was gonna say 7.
Yeah, and he showed up at the end of the Doctor Who 50th anniversary special.
I have not seen any of the newest Doctor yet, though. The guy.
Yeah, Peter Capaldi.
Matt Smith.
Yeah. Peter Capaldi is the Doctor after Matt Smith, and I just have not been able to get into him.
Oh, really? I actually lost it with Matt Smith a little bit. He had the really good Starry Night episode. I really enjoyed that a lot. My God, dude, my brain is like gone. It's like 3 o'clock and I'm ready for a nap. What's that?
I said you're fine. I understand. No, I think Matt Smith had a great storyline, but after that 50th anniversary, I think they failed him. It just went downhill after that. It's like they didn't know what else to do, and I don't know if they just spent all their creative energy on creating that 50th anniversary, but that last Christmas episode with him, I think, was just horrible story writing completely.
David Tennant was good though, man. I really enjoyed that whole arc of his, and then when he was on Jessica Jones too, he had that great season with her. He's a great actor.
Yes, him is that villain. Oh my gosh.
That's
beautiful.
The Purple Man. My God, that was really good. I don't even know if that character is ever gonna outshine that experience for me. I didn't even think that was gonna be that good. I had no clue who that was going into that season. I just started watching it. I was like, okay, I'll sit down for this. I like binged that in like a day.
Yeah, I mean, I saw them casted as him, and I'm like, well, he's a good actor, but can he really villain this character?
Chilling.
And he completely proved me wrong, and fantastic portrayal. And the Seventh Doctor is Tom Baker.
Thank you, Tom Baker.
Yeah.
Whew. Okay, I got it from my computer and walked away. I probably could have looked at it myself. Tom Baker is my absolute 100% favorite Doctor Who. Nobody will ever be. I mean, these are the cheesiest Doctor Who's, right? You can't even watch. They do not hold the test of time at all. But I just love that Doctor.
And that's fantastic. Like I said, everyone has their favorite and their Doctor, which is always awesome. And I think that's what is a testament to the fandom and geekdom in a whole.
Absolutely, 100%. And that's Michael Keaton for me too. I mean, when you look back on like the '89 Batman when it first came out, that dude doesn't look like Batman. He's scrawny. Doesn't fit that suit. He's like that Batman. the setting, the scenery, it's horrible. But I mean, it's fantastic for that 13-year-old me. That really just did it for me.
No, I love that first Batman with Jack Nicholson. I mean, it's just it has everything. The music. Danny Elfman did a beautiful job on the soundtrack. It perfectly, that whole scene. Who are you, man? A Batman, and you're just like you get the chills. Yeah, and as great as the Christopher Nolan Batmans were, because it gave us something different, I still love the Michael Keaton ones better than Christian.
I will tell you this though, man. Batman Begins is a great film in terms of respawning that franchise. And that came out of nowhere, too. I don't remember it being in the theater. I saw it on DVD. I don't know what happened that year that just kind of snuck up on us, or me particularly.
Yeah. Well, I just feel like it kind of fell apart after that. They had a great beginning. You had Liam Neeson as Ra's al Ghul, and everything was pitted together. And then, I mean, Dark Knight was good, and we had a different Joker, and Heath Ledger did a great job. But it just felt like suddenly turning him into a villain. Batman's now the villain. Let's make Harvey Dent the good guy. Killed people, and that's just like, what? I just felt like character at that point, and then we rolled into Dark Knight Rises, which was just a giant mess of.
I don't know what kind of film Dark Knight Rises was, unfortunately, but the middle one was overshadowed by not only the Joker, but that horrible event in Colorado.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole franchise after Batman Begins, which, I mean, I don't know, Ben Affleck, Batfleck, Batman versus Superman. I don't know where it's going now. But Wonder Woman, I mean, that's a great movie. That was fun. And it's kind of resurrected the whole thing, which is good, I guess, for DC.
Well, and we have, after Suicide Squad, because Zack Snyder was kind of heading everything. He was the man behind it all, like Joss Whedon was for Marvel. They said, no, we're kicking you out of the spot, and they brought in Jeff Johns, who's been kind of spearheading DC for quite a while now as the creative director, and that's why we got a Wonder Woman like we got.
Oh, you don't think what's his name? You just said it. What's his name again?
Zack Snyder.
Yeah, do you don't think he had anything to do with Wonder Woman?
My opinion, I don't think he did. Just because
it doesn't really have his aesthetic on it, does it? It doesn't really have that kind of slow motion Batman versus Superman type of 300 thing going on.
It didn't have his touch to it, his feel, and with Justice League, there's so many reshoots that's been done, and then Josh has stepped in to to finish that out. So much to the point that DC and Warner Brothers is actually giving him credit for it. And
that might be a good thing.
Yeah, I think they're moving it in the right direction.
I loved Watchmen.
But
I thought 300 was a fantastic film. And honestly, I didn't think Batman versus Superman was that much of a mess. But that whole Martha thing was just, oh my God.
It was corny.
So
I mean, it's the truth. It's the truth, but it was corny. I mean, literally, really.
It was so bad. I mean, I don't remember that being a part of that movie, that Frank Miller comic book either. I don't remember what happened that stopped the fight. I thought that Batman just beat the crap out of Superman and it was over with. He walked away without killing him.
Yeah, I can't remember either.
But I don't think that movie was based on that book either. But
no, it was a mixture of that Frank Miller book, Dark Knight Returns, as well as The Death of Superman. I mean, we kind of got it a little bit crammed. The worst part, though, which at least for me, even with all the things that were kind of going against that movie, was Jesse Eisenberg cast as Lex Luthor.
Oh, tell me about it. That was horrible. Bad choice. Bad choice.
Well, and none of that, he just seemed like a creepy pedophile, not this like manius that is Lex Luthor. I mean, the whole scene with the Jolly Rancher and just
too much the Zuckerberg in him still.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Too much of that character in this that just didn't fit. I mean, who would you have cast? Who would you have picked? What's your short list of Lex Luthor that would have made that work a little bit better?
I mean, honestly, I was really excited because there was rumors of a casting of Bryan Cranston as Lex. I think he would have been amazing at that.
Old for that. Because he's got to be about the same age as Superman, though, right? I mean, or am I putting too much of Smallville into that?
I think that's a little too much of Smallville. If you go to some of the earlier versions of Superman, like in the 50s and 60s, Lex was always older than Superman. He was always an older gentleman, and I think they still could have pulled that off. But, I mean, I still, even though Lex was younger in Smallville, I still think Michael Rosenbaum did a fantastic job. If they could have brought him back in, because he is a little bit older, he's about the same age as Henry Cavill is now, so that would have worked.
I don't know who you're talking. I don't know who that is.
Michael Rosenbaum?
Yeah.
He played Lex Luthor in Smallville.
Oh, okay. You know who you're talking about. He was perfect, actually. Maybe a bit on the small side. Perfect for television and opposite of whoever the actor was in Smallville.
Yeah, Tom Welling. Yeah.
Perfect for that particular role in that particular version of the character.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it would work for the movie though, because the Superman in the movie is gigantic. I mean, the guy's like 6'3" or something.
He is a bigger guy. I don't know. I definitely feel Mark Zuckerberg weird. Jesse Eisenberg didn't work there.
Totally with you there. I don't have a short list, but I mean, I would want him to be a little bit more kind of, I don't know, buffier.
I want him. I mean, I definitely want someone that's a master genius, someone that I could see is the puppet master pulling the strings, and I just as much as they're
himself too. You know what I mean? I want him to be physically pulling the strings of macronutrients and working out and physically primed and mentally primed and you want him to be physically fit too. And I just remember these toys when I was a kid. And Lex Luthor wasn't, flabby and whatnot. He was, had muscles too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just look at the Superman animated series, or even some of the other DC animations they put out. When you look at Lex, he is standing almost head to head with Superman. He's got a very similar build, but he's still, you can just see that look in his eye that you can see him manipulating things in the background.
It's intimidating. He intimidates the people around him, not only just mentally, but physically as well.
Yeah.
That would have been perfect. But they've never actually portrayed him like that in any of the movies. Really.
No, I mean, even Gene Hackman, I mean, as great of an actor as he is, he was still kind of not
fluffy.
That. Yeah, it was. And Kevin Spacey did a great job, but they tried to model him way too much like the Gene Hackman Lex Luthor, and that's the same problem we had with Brandon Routh as Superman. They're trying to model him after Christopher Reeves, and I think they just keep failing these characters, which is just too bad.
I think they did a really good job with the Wonder Woman casting.
Yes.
I think she's a beautiful woman, and they did a really good job with the physicality. The only problem I have with her is I don't think Wonder Woman has that accent, which it makes sense in terms of the Amazonian, I guess. But I've never, I guess it's been growing up in the 80s, Linda Carter or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't read the comics, so I'm not quite sure whether or not she ever had an accent.
In the comics, they've never portrayed her as an accent. Every cartoon we've ever seen, she's always spoken normal English. It does make sense, because the Amazons were from Greek mythology. They were isolated.
Exactly.
They should have kind of that Mediterranean Greek accent type thing.
It was a wonderful movie though too. But talking about Zack Snyder, just not Zack Snyder. Zack Snyder, right? Where's my brain, dude? It's gone.
No, I think it was someone else that directed it.
That was a woman. But I'm talking about who directed 300. Zack Snyder, right?
Yeah, Zack Snyder did.
It was missing that flair that he has. That's in every single one of his movies. That slow motion element, and I think that's what people are kind of tired of.
Yeah, that is something. It was cool. Let's face it, it was cool back in the day when we first saw The Matrix, and Keanu Reeves did that kind of back roll and the bullets zip by. But then it became like this cliche almost, where almost every movie had to have that. Even Shrek had that in there, where they jump up.
They're making lampoon of that. They were laughing.
They definitely were, but it seems like that's been like, oh, we have to slow this down to have that moment. We've seen it in the Avenger movies and stuff like that. I think we're kind of done with it a little bit. We know the action is going to be there. We know how fast a fight happens. Let's just see it happen. And I think they did a fantastic job with the way they choreographed her fight scenes. The dialogue was great. We got that pull and tug for emotions in there. We got to laugh at funny, especially like when they're sitting on the boat and he's trying to explain himself. Chris Pine's character is trying to explain himself of relationships between men and women, and she's like, "Well, why won't you lay here next to me?" And she sees it as nothing but two people laying on a boat.
Yeah.
And
what I love about that too is they painted her having a mortal peril too, with the death of her mentor on the island. You don't really have that too much in superhero films. They live forever, like Guardians of the Galaxies when they crashed the spaceship. I mentioned this in an earlier podcast. Nothing happened to these characters. They crashed the spaceship from outer space and they get up and walk away without a bruise or a cut or a broken bone. But Wonder Woman crosses the no man land and bullets are flying at her, and you just get a sense that if one of those bullets hit her, no spoiler alert or whatever, but you get a sense that those bullets, if they hit her, she's going to die, or she's going to get hurt, or she's not going to walk away without a scratch. And I love it.
And they did a great job in setting that up. Even though no one really realized it, you got that sense of, oh, there is some sense she has some mortal peril there because of the way the ant reacted as those guns were aiming at her. And then we lose that character. And I think that was set up. And when she walks out into no man's land, you get this sense of, oh my gosh, this is going to be epic, because she doesn't care. She's going to do this.
She's going to do it because she's a superhero.
Yeah, she's going to do it because she's a superhero and the main character. But more importantly, her life, she needs to get to these people to save them. And everyone else is like, no, we can't go out there. And she's going to do it. And, and that first bullet comes and she deflects it. It's just awesome.
Yeah, it is a great movie. And you know what? Chris Pine is growing on me. I call him Fake Kirk because I do not like the reboot of Star Trek. I think it's such a waste of money and time. I just, I love Captain Kirk. I love William Shatner. I hate that they gave his role away. I just let that character never be somebody else's role. But man, that dude can do some acting. He's had some great roles otherwise that I guess we would not have been able to enjoy if he hadn't been given the Fake Kirk role. the cowboy bank robbing movie that he did last summer or this year earlier. I can't remember what it was called though. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Sorry, it cut out there for a second. What was that again?
Chris Pine's opportunity since he's been given the fake Kirk role.
I'm not sure. I mean, I know
Hell or High Water.
Oh, I haven't heard of that one.
Hell or High Water was nominated for an Academy Award, I think, for Best Picture this last year, 2016.
Huh.
Highly recommend it, man. That guy can act.
How did that I don't know how that one slipped past me. I mean, he's a fantastic actor. I mean, it's kind of crazy to believe.
Yeah.
That his dad is the commander-in-chief from the old TV Chip series. That's his dad.
Did not know that.
Yeah, and he's actually really surprised me. The first time I ever saw Chris Pine act was on the movie Just My Luck with Lindsay Lohan. Yes, ages ago. Horrible movie, but yeah, I'm like, who is this guy? He's kind of playing this weird, cheesy guy that just gets to kiss and make out with Lindsay Lohan before all craziness happened to her.
Just My Luck in 2006. That's crazy.
And that's the first time I ever saw him in any movie. And then he just kept popping up. And every time, I mean, I'm not a huge Star Trek fan myself, but even it's not Shatner, it's not Spock, I have to at least give him credit for his ability to try to spearhead that property and do it at acting. Granted, it's
that
not,
was my point though. That's what I mentioned him for. I was like, I call him, fake Kirk for even being in that role. William Shatner is my favorite in terms of Star Trek, and I'm like, let the role die. Why even bother making any Star Trek films without him? But the guy can act. I mean, without that Star Trek film, we wouldn't have the opportunity to see any of these other roles. It's pretty magnificent.
Yeah, and another one that I saw him in that was fantastic was the one with Denzel Washington where they're on
the train movie, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have not seen all the way through, but I've heard that was fantastic.
And there really isn't a lot to this movie. You just see him on this train, but the dialogue that goes Unstoppable. That goes between the two. At first, he's a guy going through a divorce, and the other one's a dad, and I guess his wife died, and they're just butting heads, and then they just come together. And who would think that a 2-hour movie about two dudes on a train would be as amazing when that ended? And at the end of that, you're just like, oh my gosh, I'm rooting for this guy. And then there's the other one where he's on the boat that goes out and saves those people. Oh, dang it. I apologize. Greatest Storm or something like that. That was on Netflix recently. But it's based on a true story, and he's got this thick Rhode Island, New England accent. And goes and saves all these people off this ship that's sinking. And again, very small set because they're just on this boat, but he just portrays this guy. He oozes this charisma that's just fantastic.
Yeah. Same thing with Wonder Woman. I mean, to get back to that part, I mean, Steve Rogers, I mean, what an iconic role, right? It's been around forever. It's had many rehashes and recyclings. It's been all over the place, and he does such a great job. He just seems to be relaxed. He just does his thing, and he does a great job with it. It's really good.
But the other thing that I really find interesting and great about Chris Pine is, there are so many Chris's out there right now in superhero movies. And he goes on SNL and then just makes fun of himself and everyone else and sings that song. It's not I'm Chris, I'm playing a Steve, not that Steve, another Steve. It's just like that was perfect to do so.
And, you're right, though, man. There are a lot of Chris's out there. Chris Pratt's another one, actually.
You got Chris Pratt, you got Chris you got Chris Evans, you got Chris Pine, and you're just like, yep, all right. So
Chris Evans, wow.
Yeah.
I think he's last, isn't he? Chris Evans is at the bottom of the Chris list because I think Chris Pratt would be my number one. That guy came out of nowhere.
Oh yeah.
Came from Maui in Hawaii. Did you know that he had hooked up with Cheech and Chong's daughter for a role? Quit his job at like Bubba Gump Shrimp Factory, moved to Los Angeles for a role that basically went nowhere. And then all of a sudden he's on our TVs in that Parks and Rec show.
Well, I mean, even before Parks and Rec, he was actually here in Utah filming a small little TV show called Everwood back in the day.
Everwood?
Yeah. So it was on CW way back when. It had, what is his name? Here, let me pull it up real quick. It didn't last super long, and he had a small part in it.
Was that before or after Hawaii?
Let's see. It was in 2006. Well, the final episode is in 2006, and it had 4 seasons. So it started in 2002. So yeah, he had a very small. Well, it had Trent Williams, Chris Pratt, Emily Van Camp, and a few other.
That's crazy.
People in it. So he was in that.
Candy. Yeah.
But then he was kind of the chubby guy in Parks and Rec, and then suddenly he shows up as this really well-trimmed guy in Guardians of the Galaxy, does an amazing job, and next thing we know, he's in Jurassic World.
Yeah,
and now
he's a movie star now.
Yeah, now he's like this full-blown movie star.
He's got the hot wife or whatever. It's crazy. I mean, talking about lightning in a bottle.
Yeah.
I mean, that's basically something that me and you can attest to him in terms of being writers, in terms of trying to be, talk about a slush pile and rising to the top. What is your novel about?
So The Shadows Above the Flame, it's kind of, there's 2 stories going on within it. The first one is this large corporation, fossil fuels have ran out, which we can kind of, some of us can kind of feel that, gas prices going up. There's always rumors of we don't have enough fuel for stuff like that. So I kind of went with that kind of post-apocalyptic-esque feel.
Mad Max type situation, people fighting. Yeah.
So everyone is rushing to find the next source of energy or deposit of fossil fuels, and they go out looking everywhere. And this company called Union Forest, they've done a lot of interesting deals with governments and that, and they've been able to secure multiple drilling sites, and they hit a drilling site which they say has oil in it and unleash a dragon upon the world.
Oh wow.
So and the dragon starts wreaking havoc like any awesome dragon would do. It destroys most of Ireland, then goes over to the UK, and then goes on from there. And it has attacked the US, and because of that, a lot of these have changed. Like Washington D.C. is no longer the capital of the United States. They've moved that to Lebanon, Kansas, because that's in the middle of the continent, and they have plenty of time to mount a defense if the dragon comes attacking them. So a lot of the bright lights that we'd see, like in Las Vegas, stuff like that, those don't exist anymore because that attracts the dragon's attention. And so at this drilling site, there is what's a data core, which is kind of like a mini-sized server times 100. And they've sent a military team to go retrieve that. Now, they don't know why, but the government's told them, this Black Ops team, this is your job, this is your mission, you got to do it no matter what. So they go do it because that's their orders. Well, things go bad, and an emergency signal, and a local hacker finds that signal, happens to be buddies with a guy that works at Union Forest, which is ex-military, goes to talk to him because he found out that on the team is the guy's brother. And so he sets about trying to go save his brother, and the dragon's there. So I mean, that's kind of it in a nutshell. And then they have to face what happens over there.
So, I mean, I got the, you sent me an advanced reader copy, and I had the opportunity, oh God, I'm so freaking busy. I read the beginning. Really, really good beginning. I mean,
Thanks.
it really flowed, and I read a lot of advanced reader copies, and very few of them flow as well as your beginning did, and I was surprised. I mean, in terms of indie writers, it went really well. What is your intention with it going forward? It already has a cover, or no? Does it have a cover already? Or is it?
Yeah, the cover for the book.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does have a cover. It's actually a fantastic cover. The art is done by Brian Hills, which is actually a local artist here.
Did you send it to me? I can't remember if I saw it.
I didn't, but I can send it to you as we're
I'd love to see it.
talking.
Yeah, I love art.
It is. Let's put it this way. I've in the whole process, I've always okay. What's my cover going to be like? Because every time I go to a bookstore, you know, I browse books and stuff like that, and the first thing I notice, of course, is the cover, and that's what sells me. It's like, okay, does this book look amazing? Because I don't have time to kind of scan through it while I'm sitting there. So that worried me because I love Bob Salvatore, one of my favorite authors.
Yeah.
But those first Dritz books, Homeland and stuff like that, horrible covers. Until now, they've re-released them with some amazing covers. But those first ones, which I have on my shelf, just a.
Was it the covers that sold you on his novels though, or was it word of mouth?
Well,
because honestly,
it wasn't.
I don't even know what he wrote until like later on when people were telling me, you've got to read about this dark elf. You know, you got to read these stories that this dude wrote.
And that's what it was, because I'll be honest, for like 3 years I had looked at the book, read it, you know, the back cover, and like, okay, this is kind of interesting, and then I put it back because I'm like, nah, this cover, I don't know, and literally it was my buddies. He was like, dude, you've got to read this series, because I had read the Dragonlance series, and he's like, if you really want something that's kind of a step up from that, you got to read this book. So I went and picked it up. It was fantastic. And then I literally owned the rest of the series. And so back to my point is, I was really afraid I'd get some really crappy cover. I just emailed you the covers. So the one without the wording on it, and then the one that's just the full blown. It is a wraparound cover.
Oh, that's amazing.
It is.
Honestly.
I know. So I was worried about that. So I sent my publisher a couple sketches.
Can I post it, or is it still kind of under wraps?
No, the book is out. It's been out since June 6th, so you are more than welcome to, not the other one.
That's
that I say.
Cool. I really like that. That's stunning, honestly.
So I kind of gave some pencil sketches.
By the way, just to spit that out real quick.
Brian C. Hales.
Hales, okay. Brian C. Hales.
Yeah.
Professional in Utah?
Where
are you at in Utah? Salt Lake City?
Small town just outside of Salt Lake City.
Okay. One of my favorite podcasters actually is in Salt Lake City, Scott Johnson.
Well, what podcasts does he do?
The Morning Stream, The Instance, bunches.
Okay, yeah. I'm just south of Salt Lake, so I'm in a town called Saratoga Springs. There's another lake south of Salt Lake, and I'm just on the shore there, and
I've heard really good things about Salt Lake. I was checking out your website, and the Salt Lake City Comic-Con looks really cool in terms of being empty. Some fantastic guests, and you actually ran a bunch of the venues, or no?
For what?
Did you run a bunch of the did you moderate a bunch of the panels, or no?
Yeah, I have moderated a few panels there, as well as sat on as a panelist.
Once we cover your novel, I'm gonna ask you about a bunch of those, because they really sound interesting. But one thing at a time.
I mean, so I drew up my sketches, sent them off, and said, okay, I really need this to look amazing, because I love this book.
So wait a second, you sketched this out and then handed it to the artist to color?
No, it was nothing like that. It was a rough sketch. It was like literally kind of some squares and triangles that look like houses, and then what I could draw as a dragon. Just because I wanted to portray that first scene in the book.
Yeah.
And I sent it off, and they're like, okay, well, give us 2 others. So I came up with 2 others. I didn't really, like, all right. Like, okay, we'll send these over to the artist. I didn't hear anything for like 3 weeks. I'm like, okay, I'm knows. You know, it is an indie publisher. They're probably not going to shell out lots of money. You know, Steve Argyle is literally on the other side of the lake from me, and he does fantastic work for Magic the Gathering. I know he would have given me an awesome cover, but I definitely can't afford him. And then I got the email, hey, we got your cover. You want to see it? And I'm like, yeah. So I'm sitting here holding my fingers while I'm just like, oh no, I hope it's not horrible. And I open up that image that I sent you, the one with no lettering on it. I couldn't speak for an hour.
Wow.
I just had to stare at it because it was perfect. It was visually stunning. It was perfect. And everyone I've shown it to.
Lucky you are, bro.
Oh, I know.
You're so lucky. I've talked to artists, writers on my podcast who fought with their publisher to get what they want on their cover, and they don't get what they want, and what they get is not really what their imagination was striving for. But you got what you wanted, and that must feel so good.
It does, and I give a lot of the credit to my publisher. They've been fantastic to work with. Immortal Works is just, and I did a lot of looking around and research and talking to other authors, because I wanted the best opportunity for my writing, and sometimes the bigger publishers, they call more shots than the littler guys. They're a little bit more flexible.
Yeah. And
going with Immortal Works, it's been good because they have been that flexible. They've been willing to work, and they've delivered amazingly. I mean, I got that because of them. They were willing to work with me to go through this artist. And
not only are you set up, you're setting yourself up, you're building your career from where you're going, you're helping this guy too, Salt Lake City boy. That's fantastic. I mean,
well, and it's crazy because it seems like almost every well-known author right now is like within a stone throw of me. I mean, you got Larry Correa here, Brandon Sanderson, Brandon Mull, you've got James Dashner. The list keeps going. Tracy Hickman from years ago.
Yeah, I know that person. I like his work. The Tracy Hickman and then Margaret Weis. Yeah, that was one of my favorite collections. The Dragonlance books. Dragonlance. Yep. Yeah, it's one of my favorites.
Yeah, I still have my books, and they are creased. Even now I still go back and read them. But it's just it's amazing how much talent is here. But even with all that talent, it's really easy to kind of lose yourself in a way, because publishing doesn't care about that stuff. It's all about, book sales, so on and so forth. So I know I've lucked out, because without the cover I have.
Would you say it's lucked out? Because I was looking at your bio. You've been working in this fantasy realm for a very long time. You've been building modules. You've been DM. Game master. You've been game mastering Pathfinder and Dungeons and Dragons games for what? Decades?
Yes, unfortunately now it's been decades.
Yeah. You've been doing this stuff for a very long time, and if you've got a game or group, they count on you to enthrall them on your weekly or whatever, how many often sessions you do. So, you doing a novel is just a natural progression. It's necessary to go in that direction if you've been doing it as long as you have.
It was, and the thing was, at least for me, and this is kind of where one of my friends helped me out, is because you're right. I've been writing modules and everything for quite a while, and mine are very extensive. There's dialogue, there's action points and everything. I was at a convention in 2015, and one of my a fellow author and a friend of mine said, you know, I know how much research you put into things because I've been on panels with him and I bring, you know, stacks of paper. And then he's like, and I know how.
Oops.
He's like, you could easily write a book. I'm like, you think so? I'm like, it seems like it'd be a lot harder and vastly different than writing modules and stuff like that. And he's like, you could do it. And I'm like, all right. So, and then I called my wife up and I said, hey, I'm going to go for this. You know, it was Memorial Day. I'm like, I'm going to write a book and I'm going to have it done by. She's like, all right, go for it. And I did.
What were you doing prior to this? Were you just content creating on YouTube and podcasting, or did you have a day job?
Well,
or do you still have a day job?
I still have a day job, and I had a day job even then. And it's the same day job, which gives me the affordability to write, do other things, which is great. And not only that, I get to work from home in my home office. So it gives me but I'm like, I'm going to do this. And I went home and I went to bed in the middle of the night with the first sentence in the book, which is still in the book.
What's your, oh yeah, the first sentence is good actually.
And then I wrote it down on a piece of paper, went back to sleep. Woke up the next morning and then wrote for the next 3 months. Got the book done, my first draft. And then I spent a year in editing. It's 116,000.
So 3 months, 116,000 words.
Well, I was at 122,000 in that 3 months. I did condense stuff down through editing and that, but yeah.
And you've never, no short stories, no workshops, no anything prior to?
I mean, prior to that, it was just, it really was just listening to all the authors that came on the show. You know, we'd interview them and talk to them and, you know, what's your process in writing? And they would always give us lots of great information. And I really feel like I just absorbed all that in like a sponge. And when it came time, I just took all that I had learned and put that into the novel.
What was the most valuable piece of information that you utilized as an author? Can you do that? Can you sum it down to one thing, or?
No, yeah, I definitely can. And I can sum it into a phrase, which was mother car. I went in to a convention and John Brown and Larry Correa were teaching a class called plotting. It was plotting a book, and they taught this concept, which is called mother car. And literally, you can take anything and plot out an entire book. And I sat through that panel, and I'm just like, there's no way. And they just sat there for an hour asking questions, had people spitting out random ideas, wrote it on a board. They had an entire book idea. I mean, by the time we were done, there was an entire plot for a book, which was completely insane and crazy, but they were able to condense it and make it all, it would work. I would have bought the book if they would have had it on the table right then and there. And so I went away with that. They were handing out flyers, and I took that one thing, and that's what helped me more than anything else in the world, because I don't outline. I can't. It's the weirdest thing.
Do you know what's so funny to me? As you're talking, you're saying mother car, the feed broke up. Then you said mother car again, and the feed broke up. Then you finished your statement. I'm like, what? Oh. Then you finished. I was like, oh my God, really? Can you?
Everyone's going to be like, what's going on?
What is mother car? What is it? Can you sum it up again while the?
No, it's not a problem. I have no problem. So mother car, hopefully this doesn't break up again. If so, it's the universe telling us we shouldn't be saying this.
No secrets.
But yeah, mother car was this concept that they had designed, which was a way to plot out a book. And mother car is just the abbreviated version of that. if you really, any of the listeners that want to find out, look up author John Brown. His website actually has the video of that panel that I sat in, and the little pamphlet I have, the one-page piece of paper, which really just breaks it down. They again, we just sat there and spitballed these ideas, and they plugged it in to these areas, and it plotted out an entire book. And that's
John Brown, right?
Yeah, John Brown and Larry Correia. Larry, for those that don't know Larry Correia, he is the man that does Monster Hunter International and that whole series. And if you love guns, amazing book series. John Brown did another high fantasy one, which is another great book. Oh, I'm trying to find him here on my shelf. Servant of a Dark God is the first book in that series. Great series.
That's Correia, right?
Yes.
Okay. I'm gonna put their names in the notes, and I will look that up and fill in the information.
But, yeah, and that helped me more than anything, just because I don't outline. I'm a pantser. I just write pants, which everyone teach their own. Yeah. I love the story unveiling as I write. And every time I've tried to outline, it just doesn't work for me. So having that ability to plot out a book without outlining worked. And then, I mean, one piece of advice I would give, if you ever get stuck, start asking yourself questions. That's another thing that came out in that plotting panel I was on, is they're like, if you ever get stuck, there's no such thing as writer's block. And this is the reason why. If you get stuck, it's because you can't answer the question that's in your story. So start asking questions, and then you discover the question, you can answer it, and then you can start moving forward.
No, that's great advice. 100%.
And that's what I've done, like in the, the characters finally see the dragon for the first time, and I'm thinking, okay, they're going to jump in this boat, they're going to float downstream, and they're going to get closer to this drilling site. Everything's awesome. I get there, and I'm like, wait a minute. Ireland, all the rivers flow out to the ocean. That's downstream. That doesn't work. It's the opposite direction of this drilling site. That's back towards where the dragon is. So I had to come up with another solution, and so I was stuck. And then I started asking my question, how am I going to get out of this? How are these characters going to get out of it? And that's the best way to do it, is you start asking how your character is going to react, how are they going to solve it, how are you going to solve it? Because a lot of times your characters, based on their personalities, are going to do things differently than you would, because your personality is most often different than your characters.
I was listening to a Nerdist with Neil Gaiman the other day, and he had Terry Pratchett as his writing partner for a little while. Yeah. He would call him up and tell him that he was having a hard time with this or that. And Terry Pratchett would just tell him, well, it's simple, darling. Just think about it. And he would hang up, and it would enrage Gaiman so much. And he would think about it for a minute, and he would say, oh, it is simple. And he would just figure it out. Yeah. He would just be distracted by how much he hated Pratchett for a few minutes and be like, oh, yeah, he's right. It is simple. I just go for a swim, I just swim like laps and just think about how much I hate the writing process, and then all of a sudden it'll open up. It really is very simple, though, if you think about it. It's just logic. Yeah. Everything is based on rules. I mean, you can't violate the rules. Things have to act in a certain way.
Yeah, I mean, even looking, let's look at something as elaborate as Brandon Sanderson's magic systems.
Oh man, I need to read him so much. I have not read any of his work.
That's okay. He has very elaborate magic systems that are based on, natural law. He has still pushers, which they can push off a still. Now, and that's a cool ability. It's kind of like a force ability, but at the same time, if you're pushing against something that weighs more than you, you get pushed instead of the object. Basic physics. But even with that, he finds ways to manipulate that for certain events, but it's still within the framework that he's built. It's just manipulated just a little bit based on certain factors. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, the same rules apply, even though you have basic rules but you can still bend things. You can still kind of tweak them here and there, completely break it to the point that your readers don't believe it. And that's the ultimate thing.
It's very interesting. And God, what is his name? Rufus. Am I saying his name correctly?
Patrick Rothfuss.
Yeah. I loved his work, and he's a very frustrating guy for not coming out with book number 3 of his series. But
well, to be fair, let's be fair.
Everybody has an excuse for him. I refuse to listen to it.
Well, it's not an excuse. I'm just going to say, to be fair, it hasn't been as long as George R.R. Martin.
That's true, but I don't even care anymore because that series will be wrapped up next year, and whatever the
HBO will do it for him. The boatloads of money will still come in. He doesn't need to write. He'll just have someone say, okay, just write what HBO did and we'll call it good.
I didn't even start reading A Song of Fire and Ice until after the HBO series had started. So my mind had already been poisoned by HBO to begin with.
Yeah.
It was already a very visceral and, kind of scrappy world. It wasn't really fantasy to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like it. Are you watching this season?
I have yet to watch this season because I'm trying.
Very disciplined.
Writing down because I know if I don't, that's the thing. When I wrote that, the shadows above video games until I had it done, that was tough because I like playing video games. They're enjoyable, but I couldn't play them
anymore.
Yeah, and I don't either. And so I have to get my writing in, and then I'm only allowed to watch so many shows because otherwise I'll just not.
What are you watching?
Right now I'm rewatching the whole Justified TV series.
Yeah, people like Justified. I have not watched it. What is Justified?
It's on a U.S. Marshal that goes back to his hometown. That's in Kentucky, I believe it is, and it's just it's full of drug dealers and all sorts of crime and chaos. And he's the type of guy. I mean, this is the fantastic part about it, and what really got me hooked. Very first 5 minutes of the movie or of the TV show, he sits down. Timothy Oliphant is the main character. He's Raylan Givens. He sits down. There's this crime boss, and he's in Miami, and he sets his gun on the table and says, "All right, you have 5 minutes to get out of here, or I'm going to shoot you." And the guy's just like, "You're not going to shoot me. You're a U.S. Marshal. You're not going to do anything." He's like, and he just keeps going and going. He just keeps talking. He's like, "All right, you've got 10, 9," and the guy's like, he just keeps eating, just going on. He's like, 3, 2. He's like, "You're not going to shoot me," and he grabs the gun and shoots him, kills the guy right there. And I'm just like, holy crap! This is like the cop that's not going to play by the rules, but he still plays by the rules in a way. I was hooked, and then he of course gets sent to Kentucky, and all things craziness happen there. But it's been good. It has great dialogue, has great storyline so far. I know TV series, after they get so far along, sometimes they start dropping off.
Yeah, I'm kind of tired of the ones that just don't ever end. I'm looking forward to a time where I can actually sit down and finish season 3 of Fargo, and Better Call Saul. I'm still kind of behind on that one right now.
Well, it's like Big Bang Theory. I think it's long past its time. They need to end it.
Big Bang?
Yeah.
Oh man, there's not enough good comedies. That was just telling my wife the other day. There are not enough. We need more.
There aren't, but I think if they got rid of that one, we could get some more, because I think it's past its
Sheldon
prime.
is coming up. They're just gonna have, and they're gonna spin off the couple and their baby, and it's never gonna end. There's too much money.
I know there's money in it, but I think we need something different. That's just my opinion. I know there are fans.
You don't like the mindless fun of Big Bang Theory?
It's been good, but it's kind of wearing on me. I don't know. I want something else.
I want mindless fun. I just want to sit there and let it drone over me, and I don't want to think. You know what I mean? I don't want there to be violence and horribleness happening. Google News just has too much horribleness. Just the drudgery of it. So tired of badness of the world. You know what I mean? Everywhere you look, there's violence. Maybe it's just I live in New York City and it's just like there's so much violence outside my door.
It's everywhere. It's kind of the nature of the beast, unfortunately, and great opportunities for storytelling, of course, which we've seen through movies, TV, and so forth. But it's sad. I mean, I remember back in the day when, as a kid, I could watch Saturday morning cartoons, run outside, disappear all day, come back when it was nighttime, and that was fine.
Right.
Now everyone's freaking out if they haven't seen their kid the last hour, or it's, you don't send your kid off down the street to the park because who knows who's going to call or what's going to happen. I mean, even in quiet little town I'm in, there's someone's car got broken into and they siphoned all their gas off, or someone's stolen packages right off their front porch from that was delivered by Amazon. Yeah, I do.
Yeah, man, I have two. They're both twins. They're only 2.5 right now, but man, I don't know how to do this. When I was a kid, just like yourself, I mean, I'd run up to the park. I would run down the street. I'd take bike rides. I mean, I'd be gone all day.
Oh, yeah.
My parents would kick me out. We're done. We don't want to listen to, bye, boom. I'd go to football practice by myself. I mean, when I was in like first grade, I'd walk to school. It was like, it felt forever for me, but I'd walk there by myself across the street. And
I'd walk to school. I mean, I remember riding my bike to my grandmother's house, and she was on the other side of the city, or I'd ride 2 cities away to go visit my cousins, and I'm just on my little Huffy and riding past busy streets and everything. It was no big deal. Now that doesn't happen.
Anxiety attacks thinking about my children out there by themselves. I talked to an education specialist not too long ago on this podcast, and she said, you know what, there's not, percentage-wise, there aren't that many bad things happening. It's the news freaking you out. You know what I mean? It's like, if you look at what's actually happening in the world, one bad thing doesn't mean it's a freaking epidemic. But it's hard to get through your head that, it's not happening everywhere. That's why it's really interesting looking at the panels that you were moderating at the Comic-Con in Salt Lake City. One of them was cord cutting.
Yeah.
I'm a cord cutter too, or I imagine you're a cord cutter as well.
Yep.
And probably means that, you're not watching local news or whatever, but you're still getting that stuff pushed into your, eyeballs and getting still freaked out by that local news or whatever, those horrible stories. I mean, that are making...
the only thing we have is Netflix and Amazon Prime.
Really,
you don't really need anything beyond that, in my opinion.
That's what we have too. I mean, we have, obviously, you can find other stuff if you look hard enough. You have whatever you want. The internet's like a free for all of content.
Yeah, but I log into Facebook to make posts and promote stuff like hey, I'll log in to push this interview and people to go see it, and as soon as I'm in Facebook or on Twitter, it's popping up, and it's like, oh yay, look at that, or someone's retweeted something, or someone's reposted that and put their comments on things. It's like you can't get away from it. I mean, my phone, I have an iPhone, and I have news popping up there. It's like we live in a society where we have all this technology, which is awesome, but at the same time, it's we're bombarded from it. It's
you have to wonder what are the benefits of freaking people out? To keep you inside, to keep your family close to you, to make you appreciate the police force that's surrounding you. I mean, you don't want to be a conspiracy theorist. I mean, you don't want to actually wear your tin hat all the time, but you wrote, I mean, you called yourself a fantasy writer, but in essence, you kind of are a fantasy science fiction author.
A little bit.
Because you're writing in an post-apocalyptic world where technology still plays a part in your storytelling.
Yeah.
Well, so, I mean, you kind of have to look at conspiracies with, a fiction writer's grain of salt.
No, I mean, it definitely is. And I will give a little bit away. There is a conspiracy underlying throughout the book. There is, and Lenny actually is looking into that conspiracy. And that's kind of what is the catalyst that kind of into getting involved. But you have to. I mean, it seems like every day when looking into things, there's some sort of conspiracy. We got, when President Trump went into office, suddenly there's conspiracies flying out on him. There's conspiracy rumors flying out on Hillary. It's just like
back when Obama was president, there were conspiracies on him. I mean, whichever side's not in power, they're saying the other side's not in power. Whoever's in power is saying the other side's rotten and corrupt. I mean,
there's
you can't win. If you're winning, then you're losing. I mean, it's horrible.
Yeah, I mean, you can even go as far back as there's stuff out there that people are saying there's a conspiracy that the U.S. government completely let 9/11 happen, and it's like, I just can't believe that people would do that.
Or made it happen.
Yeah.
All the way back and say the moon landings didn't happen because we were trying to cover up this, that, and the other thing.
Yeah.
I mean, there's like,
and we didn't want Russia to beat us there, so we faked it. I mean, there's just,
or we're covering up Nixon's corruption, or we're covering up the bombing of Laos, or it's like, dude, you're ruining it.
But at the same time, we're so used to it now. I think we're so used to it now that if we have a story where there isn't some little bit of corruption, it doesn't relate to us. We can't connect to it. I mean, you look at all these fantasy books and stuff like that. What's the element? You always have this villain that's destroying things or trying to corrupt things. And you look back at Lex Luthor that we started talking about at the very beginning. He was pulling the strings and corrupting Batman and Superman and the events surrounding him and the government. And we're totally hooked. We're like, oh, Lex Luthor that was building this super bomb that was going to blow up Metropolis, but had nothing to do with the government or manipulating anything, we probably wouldn't have believed it, even though it was threatening millions of people. And maybe that's just me and in my opinion, but it just seems like that's just the natural course of things, which is just sad. It really is, because I think media has changed so much now that that's all they report on. You hardly ever see
they make stories when there are no stories, and when there is a story, they try to prolong it until they are the story ultimately. I mean, it's horrible. That's one of the reasons that I just decided I hate it, the news. I hate the cable. I just want to get rid of it. I mean, we had cable at one point, and my wife is laying there on the couch just, what are you watching? I don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean,
this endless stream of television. It's like, what is this? I don't travel channel.
Well, the point where I really decided we needed to get rid of it is when I'm sitting there, I just keep flipping through channel after channel, and then it's, well, let's watch a show. Okay. An hour and a half later, we picked a show, and we're still going through the channels, and we haven't repeated them yet. And it's just like, what's the point of this? Let's just cut this down and watch stuff that we want to.
Decide you want to watch something, watch it. And if you want to watch something else, decide you want to watch something, watch it. And then, why flood your brain with the same thing over and over again?
Yeah.
I think you're more decisive the way that we're living our lives. I like it.
Yeah. And not only that, it's just, I would love to see more human interest and more positive news. I mean, there's a lot of good that goes on in the world. I know that for a fact. I've seen it. I mean, even look at tragedies like what happened in Katrina and stuff like that. Tons of amazing people jumped in. But we never hear about that anymore. It's like so sad that, I mean, who cares if, I remember back in the day watching as a kid that the one kid that fell into that, and the whole community banded together, and that's all we watch nonstop of these people trying to help this little kid that was stuck in a well. Why don't we see that stuff anymore instead of all this horrible stuff that we see constantly?
And the news isn't going to look for that. The news is going to look for the guy who threw the kid into the well.
Oh yeah.
The news is going to look for the nurse who poisoned the ICU unit, or not poison, but euthanized the entire ICU unit so that she can get out of there and save herself, or something along those lines. You know what I mean? The news is going to look for the guy that they arrested for siphoning the gas. What I mean? The news is going to look for the most corrupt and horrible story, because that's what's going to get the clicks.
Yeah.
Because that's what scares us the most. What scares us is what we're going to read the story about.
Yeah.
Fear.
And,
So.
you know, and if ever, I mean, it sounds like a fantastic story if anyone wants to write it. I mean, someone that's so paranoid to leave their home because of all the news that they're bombarded with, you know, maybe in the future where we have microchips implanted in the new, you know, like we saw with Minority Report, you walk in, scans your eye, and then boom, 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 you're just bombarded with stuff. Maybe.
What a nightmare, huh? You don't even commit the crime yet and you get arrested. Why am I being arrested? You were going to murder your wife in 15 minutes.
Well, how do you know that? Well,
we put the parts together, man. Chaos theory. The math added up. She was cheating on you, or she was going to, or man, can you imagine? That's nightmarish situation where it didn't even happen. You're being arrested.
Yeah, and that's scary. It really is.
Isn't that Philip K. Dick?
Yeah.
Wasn't that based on a Philip K. Dick novel?
Yes.
Yeah, I love it. That's the kind of stuff I'd like to write. Not writing that kind of stuff, but.
And that, but again, even in that story, we had some corruption going on. So.
Yeah, political. I mean, God, man, you don't even know.
No.
Our political system right now is so corrupt. You don't even know.
You know, it is, and the real factor, the real element is just the human factor. You know, we are corrupt and messed up and make mistakes and are awesome and good all at the same time, but we just don't. You know, we make mistakes. People make mistakes, and it sometimes it's a domino effect. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes goodness happens, and that's just life, unfortunately. And I don't see it ever disappearing, but I think it would be a lot better if we more focused on the positive than all the negative. You know,
that's really important to remember. I mean, we are living in a country that supposedly 50% of us hate the other 50% violently. You know what I mean? 50% of us despise the other 50%. And, you know, I don't know what your politics are. You don't know what my politics are, but we got together and we talked for an hour without even giving a crap. You know what I mean? About cool subjects. And we could probably go over the rest of our lives and never, ever mention what your politics are and what my politics are, because why does it matter?
I completely agree.
Whatever the hell it is, November, 1 year, we're going to vote. And then, you know, if you swayed me throughout the course of the year to believe a certain way because of something that happened in the conversation, so be it. But you don't have to beat me with a baseball bat because, you know, whatever the hell, this or that.
Yeah.
It's very interesting that 50% of our country hates the other 50% for, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I agree. And this kind of brings me to a point. There was an interview with Morgan Freeman a while back, and I can't remember who was interviewing him, but he's like, how do you feel as an African American? And he's like, I'm not. He's like, what do you mean? He's like, I'm an American. And it baffled the interviewer, but I love that answer. He's not an African American. He's not a Democrat. He's not a Republican. He's not anything. He's an American, and that's all that matters. And I think that's what we kind of need to, what we need to remember and kind of get back to is we're Americans.
Yeah.
No matter what we believe. I mean, that's the whole country is founded by Protestant, Quakers, and Catholics, and all these other religions.
Yeah.
And we banded together as Americans and as a country, and we fought off the British. We fought off all these other wars that happened. We even had our own civil war, but we had to band as a united front, as a united team. And I think if we can get to that point where we remember we have differences.
We've been really horrible to people throughout our history, though, too. I was listening to Constitution.
No, we have.
Ooh, we've been so bad. I was listening to this podcast called Constitution. I think the Washington Journal's putting it out right now. In 1879, we decided that the Native Americans were human. 1879, we had a court case, and we said, okay, you can be human now.
Yeah,
it's like so horrible. It's so bad.
And I agree. It's really bad that they're an amazing culture. They're an amazing people. I've got the opportunity to meet some and talk with some, fantastic type of people, very humble. Again, just like anyone else, yeah, they have some rotten apples, but it's such a tragedy that this culture, this society that they had before has almost been wiped out, and they've been crammed into these little kind of like territories of, this is your place, don't wander off of it, pretty much.
That's what it was. And in that time, they had, what do they call them, reservations, and that people had, the Trail of Tears, they put them on the reservation, and a kid had died, right, a 16-year-old boy, and his father wanted to bury him in their burial grounds, and so he's traipsing across the country to do so, and he got arrested, right?
Yeah.
And they said, you're not allowed to leave your reservation, and that's when the whole thing started. It's like, you're not allowed to leave this little ground because you're not a person.
Yeah.
And it's like, we treated them that badly, and it's like, how do you get rid of that hate? Or like, Morgan Freeman says, I'm not an African American, but the African Americans or the black people or the former slaves. I mean, how do you get rid of that hate, that ancestral hate? How do the Native Americans get rid of that ancestral hate? I mean, do we say, just get over it? You know what I mean? And we can discuss it all day long, but it's up to them. Do we say anything? And
well,
it's like, oh,
see, and that's
these moral questions that we can't even discuss. You know what I mean?
No, I mean, that is the question that has the $100,000 trillion answer,
right,
which no one can really answer, because, again, if you were to offend me and I were to offend you, how I would, let it go or forgive and, move on would be completely different than how you would. Maybe, all you have to say is, hey, man, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that. We're cool, but for you, maybe it's completely different. You really want me to do something completely vastly large in my apology. You want me to post an ad in the newspaper or something like that. And that's kind of the problem, is because we're all individuals, we're all different. We all want how that apology should be. So that's really hard. And I know, some of them probably
it's just so
don't
interesting
hold any
as a
grudge.
culture. You know what I mean? It's just so interesting as the culture that we are. Because like I said, 50% hate the other 50%, but in those 50%, there are other groups that just say nope.
Yeah.
I mean, that was, I was just thinking about the Native Americans. Like, I was like playing it out in my head. I'm having a conversation with a Native American, and I'm thinking, okay, you hate me, but why do you hate me? I wasn't that person, but maybe I'm related to that person through some kind of ancestry. Maybe my family was, coal miners in the 19th century in West Virginia or something. Well, my family went through some shit.
Yeah.
But, blah, 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 blah. You still hate me because I hurt your family. I mean, I did horrible things, but it's hard to express.
Yeah, no,
It's really difficult because that hate is really ancestral. It's violent.
No,
I mean,
it is, and not only that, it is passed down. Because you see, as much as we don't want to admit it, even though our parents were probably there, but they probably still said things. My grandparents, I mean, up until probably the last 10 years, never call an African American. They use a very specific word, which I would never repeat. But to them, that was normal, because that's what their parents said, and that's how it was taught to them. And it's really weird to think that when my grandma and my grandpa were born, they were still driving around in horse and buggy. They didn't have a car, and there's been so much that's changed since their birth, and so there were these prejudice and these names and stuff like that are just horrible. But and then those individuals that they were called those things, they've held on to that, and they passed that down to their kid, and that's been passed down. So it's not surprising that we have what we have as a society. I mean, it's just unfortunate.
Yes, I mean, if you look at the history, it's not surprising that we're at the place that we're at. And I guess as fathers, we look at our children and hope what? Because I mean, in terms of the African American community, or whatever, the American community that live across Interstate 80 from where I'm at right now, you know, what are my children going to have to deal with, because they've got, you know, their fathers are in prison, you know, they've this horrible drug war that's been waging for the last 30 years has really put a blight on that specific community. What can I expect? You know what I mean? It's been horrible. It's been ravaged.
No, it's tough. And I mean, like I've tried to teach my kid that, you know, we're all human. We all make mistakes. And we need to treat everyone with kindness and respect. You know, even if someone upsets you and, you know, does something to hurt you, you need to treat them like a human and not be mean back. You know, that's the only thing I can think of, because, you know, otherwise it's just an escalating chain. You know, they did something to me, I do something back, they do something back, and
I'm covering stuff like this in my novel.
Yeah.
I'm writing about a future where, you know, there's fences around cities. Like there's a whole group of people that are kept out of a polite society, basically. There's wars against other countries that are violent, and, you know, against for water and basic necessities. I mean, there's no such thing as clean air.
Yeah.
You know, the necessities are basically fought for.
I mean, we see that, you know, Hunger Games. We see that in there. And their resolution to that is, oh, we're going to kill a couple kids every so many years. And that's even more horrible. It's like, we're not sending adults, we're sending children, because we know that if you harm our children, most parents in that are immediately going to cower. It's like, okay, we're not going to do anything.
I never read the Hunger Games. Did you read those novels? I saw the movies.
Very graphic. Especially that last book, man, that just tore my heart out. They bomb an entire school of children, and you're just like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me?
In terms of being an author, though, did you think that world was legitimately set up? Like, or was it just like a fantasy world? Was it our world, or was it a fantasy world?
It's definitely our world. It's in the future. It's definitely North America. Not exactly sure how it's laid out exactly, but it's America. That from my interpretation of it, because someone else could read it and they could say it's Russia, or maybe they feel like it's a completely different world. That's the beauty of writing, without specifying things. It's the reader's interpretation.
Not mad at the author.
And you know, I enjoyed it. It was a good read. It was definitely something I can't read again. I love my kids, and I could never imagine my kids having to be horrible, in my opinion. And that's what was so tough. You know, Maze Runner, another great book, but again, it involves kids in a very kind of similar situation, and it was great to read, but wow, I just can't go back.
Are these both YA fiction books?
They are. They're both YA fiction.
Are you writing YA, or are you writing more adult fantasy?
I'm definitely writing adult. I did write a YA short story, which will be out in anthology.
I saw that
in December.
That's interesting. Somebody said to me on Twitter the other day, my goal in 2018 is to submit more of my fiction to collections and literary magazines. Did you have any formatting concerns when you submitted your story to that collection?
No, actually I didn't. When they asked me if I'd write in it, and I said, okay, I don't really know how to do this, because I've only written a novel. What's expected? I mean, that was the first question. What's expected? And I'm like, well, you know, what's the word count? What content are you looking for? And so that was the great thing, is they came back and said, okay, we want this many words. This is kind of what we're looking for. We want it to be tied into this book, so read it. And then other than that, we want this specific power to be included with your character. Otherwise, you got free reign. And I'm like,
basically, you're living every writer's dream. People are coming to you and begging you to write for them.
Well, see, I was lucky. You know, I wouldn't say they were begging.
No,
but,
you gotta stop saying that word, my friend. You're a very talented guy. I'm telling you, you earned everything that's happening to you right now. You've done all the work.
Yeah. I don't know. I still feel like I'm brand new in the game. I know I've been the small fish swimming in the pond
How many
with all
YouTube
these other
videos
authors.
do you guys have out right now?
I couldn't even count.
See, and that's no small fish in a little tiny. That's a big fish in a little tiny pond.
I know we have over 600 podcasts out. I do know that.
That's amazing.
But so when I finished my draft, I sent it out. One of those authors was Jason King, which owns Immortal Works. Mm-hmm. This was before he had started Immortal Works, and he read over the first draft. And it was a few weeks after that he actually came to me and said, "Hey, I'm doing this anthology. I want you to write in it. In this anthology." So that's where that start came from.
That's pretty cool.
Which was, and I was like excited because that was a cool opportunity.
Right.
and then I wrote that. That took a little bit of time, just because I had to read the book first, and then I wrote, and then I went through all the editing. I was querying, which is really heart-wrenching and painful.
Forget about it, man. I was doing agents and I just gave up. I think I reached out to every single agent in the entire country and said, you know what? I'm not doing this anymore. I didn't even do publishers.
I was doing the agent thing too, and some of it was like getting Rochambeau'd.
Okay, what is that? I know that has something to do with bamboo.
No. So Rochambeau came from South Park, and basically that is a game that Cartman and the kids would play, where basically you up, spread your legs, and the first guy kicks you as hard as he can between the legs. If you can stand, you get to kick him. But if you fall down, game over.
Oh, that doesn't sound fun. I think my son plays that with me all the time, and I lose.
And so it's painful, and nothing could have prepared me. Everyone's like, it's rough, it's horrible, but some of those agents were, they were nice. They're just like, I don't think I'm a good fit for this. So others were just brutal, and you're like,
man, I didn't even get anything back, but like form letters. It's like, okay. What happened to my query letter?
Yeah,
it just disappeared.
And then there's some that just never respond, and you're like, really? We not even a no thank you or a sorry not at this time, just nothing. All right. But yeah, so that was I'd given up on that. I'd sent a few to some other publishers, and then that's when Immortal Works came up, and
I found out later on that I was submitting to the wrong type of genre, though. My novel I was kind of doing for crime fiction, and I submitted for a contest, and they said, first off, this is not crime fiction, this is literary fiction. You're dumb.
See, and not see it as urban military fantasy. I just thought it was fantasy. It had a dragon. And then, my folks were like, no, it's urban military fantasy. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, what defines that now? Because there's so many twists and turns within now. I mean, we got steampunk, we got cyberpunk, we've got romance, we've got supernatural romance. There's just all these things that you're like,
how do you come up with what it is that you're writing? You wrote the story and then you have to define it. I mean, that's really difficult.
And you got Western, but if you throw a dragon in it, now it's called Weird West. It's like, what?
See, I want to write a fantasy Western. That's on my list. I've like 5 novels down. I'm going to write one.
That is I want to write a Western. I grew up.
A Western or a fantasy Western?
Fantasy Western. I have to have a fantasy element in there. But John Wayne, all this stuff, my grandpa always had it on. My mom had it on. So I love that. Even now, I can't get enough of Westerns. Magnificent Seven, amazing. 310 to Yuma. I know a lot of people don't love it, but I love that gritty feel. It's kind of the U.S.'s, medieval period, Europe. But without throwing the element into it, I can't do it. I have to have that fantasy in there.
There's something to it. I don't know what it will be exactly. I just really like it a lot. But yeah, it has my imagination. I've got so many things on my plate though. I'm not starting anything else until I finish what I'm already started.
Well, and that's the funny thing is, I was told, and like, okay, you realize once you open this floodgate, it does not stop.
Yeah.
The ideas just keep coming at you and bombarding. Depends on how fast can you get the current project done so you can get it to work on one of these and hope the others stay in your mind. And it's true. I mean, it's like I'll be sitting there and just some random weird thing comes to mind. Like my son, he got sick and we had to rush him to the hospital.
Oh no.
We were sitting there, they were doing blood tests and they're like, yeah, he has a blood infection. And I'm sitting here, this whole story idea came to mind. Created a biological weapon that actually was airborne that caused a infection in everyone's blood, which we all need. We can't live without it. I mean, how would you deal with something like that where everyone's dying because literally their blood is eating their body?
Uh-oh. I think we're losing each other. There we go.
Oh, did we lose
Hello?
it?
Yeah, I think I lost you mostly there.
Oh, what was the last thing I was saying?
The blood was eating the body.
Oh yeah. So it was I know it's morbid because we're sitting there and my son's, plugged up to all these machines, but the idea just hit me. It's like, oh, that would be an awesome book. But at the same time, I'm already working on a book, so I can't get to that. So it's all these random things that just bombard you. I mean, you can be sitting on a subway or on a train and suddenly, oh, that's an awesome idea. And if you don't have a notebook,
I'm just concentrating on what I'm currently working on. You know what? I read a lot of short fiction. That's what I put all my new ideas into, and my work in project, my work in progress, which is taking me forever. My goal is to finish it by the end of the year.
That's my goal for my current one.
So what is your goal? You're done with the novel right now? It is coming out. It is publishing.
Yes.
Are you working on something related to it or a totally new project?
So I did start a new project, and then I just actually this last weekend shelved it temporarily because I just got an idea that I have to do, which is now going to be the second book. I was driving my car and the whole first half of the book just hit me, which ties in some loose ends that I left in the first book, and it just puts everything together. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, I have to do this. So I've already started it, and I'm on my way in.
Well, that's fantastic, man. So this is not a trilogy or a series or anything, the first book then?
No, I mean, the first book it was designed as a standalone. It has a beginning and an end, but it definitely has enough at the end, a series. But just kind of doing some research as a first-time writer, I didn't want to get stuck because a lot of times I heard that if you go in as first-time writer, most publishers aren't willing to pick up a series because you don't have anything to back you up as proof that you have an audience and your books are solid or you're an awesome writer. So with just some advice from some of the authors, write a standalone, but leave enough that it could become a series, and more than likely you're going to get picked up. And so that's what I did. And far seems to be loving the book. And now I'm going to write this next one and pitch it, and hopefully the publisher will say, yep, we want to make it a series.
I would agree. Honestly, that's really stellar advice. If I was going to advise a new writer, I would say write a standalone story and then write another one. And you know what? If somebody wants to pay you to write a continuation of the first one or the second one, take the money and run. But don't pigeonhole yourself. And a lot of people do for some reason. Write 3 books, write 4 books, write 5 books on the same character or whatever it is. Like, why are you doing that? Aren't you interested in writing something new, being a interesting person?
Yeah, and I really wanted to write this other one, but I'm just feeling like the story from some of these characters still needs to be told, which is why I'm struggling with the other one. So I'll just get this out of the way, go back to the other one. That way I'll get a couple books out, because the other one I'm almost 30,000 words in, so I have a fair chunk done, and then I'll focus on this one, and hopefully.
A cool dude. I am so happy that I got to talk to you.
Well,
I've
thanks.
I've had you on for like an hour and a half now.
Oh boy.
I don't think I want to keep you any longer because I think we could talk probably all day long.
Oh yeah.
So I asked a couple questions to round out the podcast.
Sure.
Just the first one is, what are you reading?
What am I reading right now? I'm actually reading. I want to get the name correct because it's actually been a funny book. The Adventures of Tom Stranger.
The Adventures of what?
The Adventures of Tom Stranger, Interdimensional Insurance. Written by Larry Correia. So I'm reading it, but I'm also listening to the audiobook because the audiobook is actually read by Adam Baldwin that played Jane off of Firefly.
Oh,
It
wow.
is hilarious. It's just funny. So that's what I'm currently reading.
And that's interesting. I remember a story that he challenged Will Wheaton to some kind of dick off or something like that on Twitter.
Yeah.
Who's the bigger like prick or something like that? I can't remember the exact story. And the second question would be, what advice would you give to somebody struggling to finish their first novel? Or actually, what advice would you give somebody struggling to, put content on the internet? 'Cause I guess right now you're king of that too.
I mean, as far as content, just put it out there.
Hit publish.
It just get it out there. With my podcast, there's sometimes there's just we don't have an interview lined up. We don't have awesome content. We just sit down. We just talk. We just get something out there because as long as you have consistency, people keep coming back. And I think it's one book. People may look at you, 2 books, more people are going to look at you, 3 more, and then it just keeps rolling. It's like that domino effect. As far as writing,
Jason Abbott says the exact same thing. You want to sell 1 book, write 2. You want to sell 2, write 3.
Yeah, and as far as writing, just keep writing. In some days you're not going to. Maybe it's only 5 words. Don't beat yourself up. Because you may have done a lot of research that day, or maybe you need a break. But at least try to get some writing done in one form or another, whether it's just writing down your thoughts, writing down, say, okay, I want to look into this for the part of the book. But definitely don't beat yourself up, because there have been days where I can't write a single word because I need a break.
It's hard needing a break. Because I definitely feel like that get into danger zone push, right? I mean, in terms of getting words on paper, you could always go back and delete them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where can we find you?
So definitely on Immortal Works webpage. I do have a webpage which will probably be changing soon, but for right now, it's the Creation Matrix. You can just do a Google search. For Creation Matrix, that's the current website. Or you can find me on Twitter as author Daniel Swenson 77, or on Facebook.
There are a lot of Daniel Swensons on Twitter, aren't there?
Yeah, I noticed. Or just on Facebook, author Daniel Swenson. Those are the best places to find me on social media. The website is just very basic. I don't do any blogging. Most of my content when I talk about anything's on my podcast, which is Dungeon Crawlers Radio. You can spell all that out, dungeoncrawlersradio.com, or if you want it simple, just do dcrshow.com, and that'll take you to our webpage.
Have we covered everything that you wanted to talk about today, or is there anything missing that you want to have added on to the end here?
But definitely take a look, check out the book. I do know the ebook is on sale right now. It's only $2.99, so
okay.
It's not full price, so that's always awesome. The physical book is out there, and everyone has been. There have been a few people that haven't liked it, but that's okay. Not everyone will like it. I understand that, but
reviews are awesome. At least you're taking the time to review it, and that's brilliant. That's awesome.
Yeah, most of the people that have read it have really loved it. It is definitely fast paced. Once you get in, it's long, and it's going to be a fun ride for you.
Fantastic, man. Thank you so much for joining me today. I
Yeah.
really appreciate it. And I hope to have you on again, especially when you publish your next novel. And if you have anything else you want to talk about, you always have a friend in me. All
awesome.
right?
I would love to come back.
Definitely. Great. Excellent. Thank you, Daniel. I'll talk to you soon.
Welcome. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
And that was Daniel Swenson. It's been a good week. I've got some cool stuff coming up, but until then, definitely check out my Twitter feed. You could follow me at BRYAIELLO. Also, brianaiello.com is my website. If you've got comments or questions, you can email me at me@brianaiello.com. Definitely appreciate you listening. Really makes me feel good. Until next time, have a great week. Bye-bye.